Hi, welcome to Business is Personal. I'm Dr. Corrie, and I'm really excited about our guest today. I have with me a good friend. His name is Meiraj Hussain, and he is the Group Head of HR and Corporate Services for the Masaood Group. Fun fact, by the way, the Masaood Group is Abu Dhabi trade license number 1. So they're like the oldest family company that there is in Abu Dhabi. And so it's an amazing privilege to have him with us. He is the group head of HR and corporate services there, and he's been with the group for 5 years, and before that I've worked with him in a couple of other companies. So really excited to have you, Meiraj. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Doc. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invite.
Well, no problem at all. It's always nice to sit down and have coffee with somebody that I like, you know.
Yes.
And I don't know all of my guests all very well beforehand, so
yes.
Being with somebody who's a very good friend, I think, is an amazing privilege.
Fantastic. It's been a wonderful journey working with you over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I've done like what you've been doing with Masaood, the whole corporate services, you know, providing business services like HR and finance and IT across a number of different verticals and even across different industries. It's a very complex process, and I've led a few companies in my career through the transition into a business services model. And I want to hear from you, from being on the inside, because I'm always coming at it from the consulting end.
Yes.
Right? I'm always the external guy saying, hey, structure it like this, do like that. But I've never actually been the inside man that's been leading that change. So tell me, what is that corporate services model, or what can you do with that corporate services model that really drives value into the organization?
Great. It's a wonderful question. Masaood, as you know, is Abu Dhabi's oldest private company.
Yeah.
It's trade license number 1, as you rightly said, with a history for 50 years. This year's our 50th
Oh,
anniversary.
Congratulations, 50 years.
Yes, 50
That's
years.
amazing.
50 years in business.
Should I live
And
I live that long, right?
And it was run by Mr. Abdullah Al-Masaood,
Yeah.
who retired from the board about 5.5 years ago. Since that time, the company went through a modernization exercise.
Right.
So all the corporate services were established and further strengthened. That covers finance, marketing, HR, IT, etc. And we have 7 distinct revenue-generating business units, each with a GM or a CEO, and then the corporate services work very closely to deliver value to the business.
Right.
The business relationship with corporate services is an interesting one. As you know, it's a big cost for the organization. Typically, the revenue generators pay for that, so there has to be value that is delivered, and that value is in the form of partnerships and enabling the business units to be more successful. Now, we do that in a number of ways, one of which is we do surveys, regular pulse surveys, to see what the sentiment is, and to get that detailed feedback from the businesses as to how well we're doing, and then we action all of those things. And then the very important thing is to have experts that we bring into the business on the corporate services side. So general managers love to do bits of HR, bits of marketing.
That's true.
They're generalists, they're very good.
Yeah.
The idea of corporate services, you've got these passionate experts that can be engaged by the GMs to really help them achieve their goals and take it to the next level. So it's a combination of working together as one team. The last 4 or 5 years in corporate services, what I've seen is the days of very compartmentalized experts are gone. Typically, to achieve a project, you would have people from the business, marketing, HR, IT, all partnering to form a team that delivers on a particular project. So, one HR person or a marketing expert can't always deliver what is needed for the business. So you have to have that pool of expertise that you bring into project teams, and they work together.
And do you find that with that corporate services model, you always have what you need internally?
You do. I think it's a lot of things come into mind when you say that. I mean, the picture that the one builds up when you talk about corporate services is this very expensive team of experts that sit at the head office. I think that model is very much redundant nowadays. In this day and age, you've got to have a combination of centralized core services that can be delivered optimally as a team. And then you have the experts who actually sit in the businesses. So when you live and breathe the business with the GMs and the operational people, you are more able to deliver better value to those businesses as opposed to the head office. And also at the end of the year, when you have your corporate recharge, it's not such a shock to the businesses to absorb that corporate recharge if the experts are in their businesses.
That's fantastic.
So I've done a lot of work around that. We had a centralized model but we've decentralized it through a business partner model in the recent years.
Right, and then that allows you to retain better talent or to attract better talent, because the cost of that talent is spread over the business units themselves.
Absolutely.
Right, so then you have those expertise in-house that
Yes.
each of the units themselves wouldn't be able to afford.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Correct,
absolutely fantastic.
And the time spent in the businesses should be proportionate to the cost share that those businesses bear of the corporate services cost at the end of the year.
And when you're able to do the numbers like that and you do them accurately for the business units and they're paying their relative share of the cost centers, do they find that they're getting value?
Yes, the idea is always to deliver the value.
Right.
I mean, it's at the end of the year, that cost share is charged to the businesses. But during the year, if the engagement and all of that is there with the GMs and the businesses, it's less of an issue at the end of the year. But I think all corporate services people need to ask the question: am I delivering value to the businesses? What is the form of that value? Right. Is it my time? Is it projects that I worked on?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is it my contribution towards revenue and profit? And and that's how it needs to be done.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, I'm a huge fan of the model. I've been, like I said, I've been restructuring and instituting it for my clients for years, and so I just wanted to see what it was like from an insider perspective. If it's actually as effective as we consultants think it is, We're strategists, we're like playing games with people's lives, moving them around like puzzle pieces. But I want to make sure that the puzzle looks good when it's actually done. Yeah. Oh, very cool. For me also, I think one of the big challenges of making sure that a transition like that can happen, especially in a company as old as Masaood, is to make sure you have the right leaders on board.
Absolutely.
And it's that not just the right leaders, but a culture of leadership that's really cultivated across all of the tops of the businesses and across all of the corporate services. Right, you need to have really great communicators. People who can communicate across different departments and across different industries. Yes. So how were you able to build that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, the mixture of businesses that we have at Masaood is consumer and B2B. So we've got both of those type of businesses to deal with. But in building a leadership team, a lot of time and attention needs to be put in place to make sure you bring in the right leaders. And it all starts with shared values. What are the values of the organization? And you've done some very good work around
well,
those.
I was there.
You were there, right?
I got to be in the facilitation. I was the facilitator with the executive committee when we actually wrote down the values of the organization. So that was a huge privilege for me to be in the room at that time. Yeah. And I think it's important to have the right conversation and the right facilitator in the room to get that done. But once we got it done, to see it cascade down through the organization, I think that was a massive privilege, because it didn't just become a collection of words that sat on the boardroom wall or on the About Us page of the website, right? It became living, it became breathing, and now if you walk around in Masaood Group, and I'm privileged to still be spending a good deal of my time there every year with the leadership training and the programming that we're doing, I can ask people, what is the mission of the organization, and they can tell me. Maybe not all of it word for word, but they can tell me the key points, and I ask them what the values are, and they remember the values that are really meaningful to them. And each person can find meaning in those values. So I think you're right. I think that was making sure you have the right wording is really important.
Yes, absolutely. The values, building the teams, and it takes time. It's taken us a good couple of years to assemble a team of really good leaders within the organization. And then your recruitment team is really important to make sure that they can measure individuals, to make sure they're going to fit into the culture. They have a similar style of management. They have a sense of duty and care towards other employees that they manage. And you measure it. When you have a new leader coming in, you have to check. You have to check the pulse of the organization, their team members, their peers, which is very, very important to understand how well they're doing. And occasionally, you will make a mistake. You'll bring somebody on board as a perfectly fine individual, but they're just not suited to your organizational culture. And I think that's been one of our big achievements. We have probably, arguably, one of the best teams in the large private companies, and that's reflected in our top line and bottom line.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, you guys, through the dips of 2019 and then COVID in 2020, you were expanding and gaining market share during times when other companies were throwing in the towel or at least receding.
Absolutely.
And I think that was, for me, I took a lot of pride in that, because I was able to help contribute to the culture.
Yes.
That brought all of those people together, and to hear the conversations that were going on in the background, in the back rooms, on the Zoom chats, like we're in this together. This is gonna hurt, but as long as we stick together and we're facing in and we're linking arms, then we can survive this and probably anything.
Absolutely.
And you did, and you survived this and probably anything.
Yeah, we did really well. No, I'm really proud of the achievements of everybody within the business. Our leaders, our employees, working as one team with one spirit to really drive a very successful year in the last 2 years that we've had COVID. And I think part of that has been the empowerment culture that we have within the business.
Right.
Every employee is a member of family, they're a stakeholder in the success of the organization, and they're rewarded according to the results of the organization.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so for those of you in the audience, I'm going to talk to the camera from time to time. Also, I'm breaking the fourth wall right now, and I'm telling you that I'm doing it while we're on the podcast. So this, it's all just a little bit raw. Anyway, so for those of you who are in large companies that are looking to replicate or at least try to tack on to what the winning formulas are here, I just want to highlight a couple of things. Make sure you get your strategy and your wording right. Your values need to be right from the top, from the beginning. Okay, so vision, mission, and values, and make sure that they're cascaded. Second thing that Meiraj highlighted, and I want to highlight that to you, is you've got to invest in your recruiting team. Your recruiting team has to be amazing, not just at finding people that are qualified, but at finding people that are qualified that are also a good fit for the culture of the organization. And then thirdly, and again, I don't want to miss this, is empowerment, making sure that everybody in the organization understands their place and that they have themselves some autonomy for making sure that that their work gets carried out in the most efficient and effective way. So I don't want to miss any of those three things, right?
Great. I guess it's like a recipe, no different to when you cook something in the kitchen. It's about timing of the ingredients that go in. The quality of the ingredients that go in the first place is very, very important. The only thing that I've learned as well as heading corporate services and managing HR is that the quality of your talent, a bit like a dish, the ingredients that you put into that dish have to be of a very high quality to make sure you have the right dish at the end.
100%.
So you've got to have the best of the best coming into the organization, whether it's leadership or at lowest level of the organization. There is superior, mid-range, and an average. So we try and, in every segment that we recruit, we try and recruit the very best individuals.
I see that also the way that you do, and I see the end result of that. One of the things that I commonly challenge is the idea of talent retention. So I typically say talent retention is a myth, because the more talented somebody is, the more difficult it is to retain them. Right? So there's an inverse relationship between talent and retention, right? So that's why I say it's an HR myth. So what are the things, I think my case in point has been Laszlo Bach. He's the former head of HR, group head of HR for Google, and being with access to all of the research on the planet, all of the analytics on the planet, the number one HR guy on the planet couldn't even retain himself. So that for me is the case in point that talent retention is probably this mythological creature, like a unicorn that we're all chasing in HR. But how have you been able to attract talent? Like what, let's say, non-monetary benefits have you been able to offer that have really brought some of those talented people on board? And then how have you kept them interested to manage your tenure now? Your average tenure is close to 7.5 years, right? At Masaood, is that right?
It is just over 7 years.
Okay, good.
Which is much higher than other markets.
It is. It's a lot higher than the average here, and it's 3 times higher than the average millennial. Right? So how are you able to, one, attract that kind of level of talent, 2, how are you able to retain them?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. I think there's no magic wand that can, that can deliver that. It's a combination of so many different factors. Your board, your leadership team, how people feel within the organization. If you pay a fair price for somebody's services, that's really important. I think you've got to benchmark what the market is paying and make sure all of your employees are paid fairly. At a leadership level, it's the average tenure, in my view, for a leadership position is 3 to 5 years. At the end of that, you've got to provide an interesting challenge for people. They can't keep doing the same thing in exactly the same way they've done it over the last 5 years. It just doesn't work.
Right.
So either you replenish their knowledge and expertise through training and development, a bit like we've done with your engagement at Masaood, which has really helped. And then you give them interesting assignments within the company.
Yeah.
So you enhance, you can increase their responsibilities. You can do job rotation, or just move them around internally to a similar role, but in a different, slightly different capacity. It could be a different brand. We've had GMs who've moved within the organization, taking responsibility for different automotive brands. We've had people within corporate services that moved from one department to another.
Right.
And the projects that they work on also, you can change those projects. So over and above the day job, which we all have, as you know, there should be something interesting, which is what I call 2 to 3 projects that every individual should work on,
right,
which really helps them take their skills to the next level, pushes the boundaries of what they know, and it adds a new dimension to what they've done before. I think that's really important.
Now, I was talking with one of my previous guests about the benefits of flexible work. So I was talking with a previous guest about the challenges of 2020 and how a lot of companies have struggled to kind of move toward a remote working environment.
Yes.
And I know that for some tech companies it's been a fairly easy kind of shift, but for traditional family businesses like Al Masaood, they're really struggling with that. What's been effective in moving people toward remote work and then toward deliverables-based pay? Yes,
you're absolutely right. It's a very, very important subject within the business. I don't think we have concluded fully and adopted a remote working model, but certainly what the pandemic has shown is for many positions, and I say that with very carefully, not every single role can lend itself well to remote working. So you've got to look at the organization, you've got to look at what people do. Typically in corporate services roles, they tend to lend themselves fairly well to either home working or a remote working model. When I say remote working, I'm actually referring to somebody working from a different country. We have looked at that, and we have a very small number of individuals within the business that have worked from overseas, and very successfully and seamlessly for the organization.
Very good.
And very importantly, at up to 45% less cost. So the company's very happy, and they're also very happy because they were in their country with their loved ones, and they're continuing to work with the organization. Having said that, we are very much mindful of mirroring what the Abu Dhabi government is doing, and the government is full capacity, everybody's back at the office, and I think that's a good thing. And I think people need that human contact.
I agree with you.
I think coming to an office, socializing with your colleagues, seeing people as you walk around, the office is a really important form of social contact.
Of course.
And it gives people, it meets their social needs for connecting with others. So that's really important. Having said that, we've had nearly 2 years of people working from home, partially, let's say 2 days or 3 days a week. We've had a small number of individuals that have actually who live in some of the northern Emirates, and were fairly well settled in the rhythm of working from home.
Right.
And now they've had to come back into the office, and that is challenging to come back every day, especially if you're a long distance commuter.
That's right.
And that's something that we are looking at addressing right now to see whether we can actually do that. For us, it's also a question of parity.
Right.
So we have business units, and we have many staff who are in retail or operations that don't have the luxury of working from home.
Some things you just can't do from home. You can't
sell
cars from home.
You can't. So it's got to be a little bit of, if you're in a support function, you have to be mindful of your colleagues who have to be there every day.
Right.
So I guess it's a question of getting that balance right, and it's a question of also management, owners, and different types of leaders. Bringing spotlight onto this issue and debating it, discussing it, and coming up with a formula that works for us and works for our employees.
Very good.
So that's where we're at right now.
All right, last question just before we go. If you were going to give 3 very quick pieces of advice to a board of directors of a family company of more than 1,000 employees for 2022, what would those pieces of advice be?
First of all, learn to delegate responsibility and authority. It's absolutely important. People, when they realize that you've given them the trust and confidence with something as precious as their business that they've built up, they really take that responsibility very seriously, and they will do everything they can to deliver great value to you. So take the leap, and especially this is a message for owners who are operationally involved, and they are thinking, am I going to let go of the operational reins to another individual?
I deal with that all the time.
Or am I going to keep control?
Yeah.
So this is something, if you choose the right individuals with the right set of values, you can be very comfortable and sleep well at night knowing that your business is well taken care of.
Good.
Start with bringing in a great leadership team. 2 or 3 key people who could really drive your business to the next level.
Right.
You have your checks and balances. As owners, you should always have your checks and balances.
Right, sure.
That's your compliance department. That's a very strong audit department. If somebody whispers into your ears about certain things not happening very well within the organization, you have a right to information and an investigation if required. But it's very, very tempting for many owners to, when things don't go so well, is to start taking operational control.
I've seen that a lot in my life.
I've seen that a lot. So this is the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice I would give, if you are making money, and if you're making a lot of money, and the money you make is increasing, share some of that money with your employees, right? In the way of bonuses, incentives. It never goes unrewarded, and it's a great retention measure. It meets people's needs and fulfills the needs of the community that you work for. This is something, be generous. It always comes back to you in better revenue and profits for the following year.
Generous owners never go unrewarded, and greedy owners never go unpunished.
Absolutely.
Right? This is something I've seen in so many different businesses. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah. And the third piece of advice I would give is have very strong controls with your organization. That is, reports, collecting the right information, data, dashboards, so you can really see the pulse of the organization. And you as an owner can diagnose if there are any problems within your organization. And that includes surveys, asking your people more frequently what they think of the business. On a number of parameters, and your people who are in the operations on the ground know your business far better than somebody in a senior management head office will ever know. So give them the chance to voice their views, both in terms of what can be improved for the organization, and also things that are not working so well. So you can fine tune that.
That's my model of empowerment. Is that as authority flows down, as the delegation flows down, the information flows up. So those 2 things that you said, number 1 is to delegate to people, and number 3 is to collect good information. There's an inverse relationship there, and if authority is flowing down really well, information will flow up really well, and if authority is not coming down, then information won't come up. And I've seen that relationship in so many different ways, moving both positively and negatively in different organizations. So very good.
Can I give you one more?
Yeah, go
on. You've got to build trust.
Yeah.
So trust is between your leadership team, it's between your leaders and your employees, and it's between your board and your leadership team. Every level of the organization needs to have trust.
100%.
As a basis for establishing success.
100%.
And you'd be surprised how many companies, somewhere in that chain, trust is not gone.
Well, they don't teach trust classes in an MBA, right? They don't teach this to engineers. They don't teach trust like in any business acumen school. Like they don't teach it, and yet it's the number 1 most important ingredient if you're gonna move quickly. And you're gonna carry a lot of talent with you while you're moving quickly. There's got to be a great deal of trust at the top level for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've talked about talent retention and what it takes to draw the right talent in and to keep them. But if you're on the employee side of that exchange and you're not quite sure if you're getting a good deal, as an employee, how would you make the decision that maybe it's time to go, maybe it's time to let go of the organization and not be retained anymore? What are the inputs that, I know this is not something that you should be saying as an HR, because you want your people to stay, but for employees that are maybe out there that are looking for the right time to shift from one community to another community, how do they know?
Yeah, look, I think people moving to different assignments, different projects is perfectly normal. I mean, it's not a wrong thing for somebody as part of their career journey to look at opportunities outside. Before you do that, I think it's always worth asking yourself the question: what is the reason for you moving on in the first instance? And what I find is that the most single biggest reason why people move is the relationship between them and their boss changes. So either a new boss comes in, or something happens to that relationship. The trust element, which is what we talked about, is lacking or broken. Sometimes it's the next level of management up as well. So maybe the boss relationship is working really well, but the organization relationship at a senior management level is not what it used to be. This is one. Secondly, people are always tempted. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all here to further our careers, to earn our livelihoods, and it's turning now, which is quite promising for employees, into more of a candidate-driven market. I think certainly at a certain level, or a specialist area that you're working in, there is increasing demand, and the recruitment agencies will tell you that things are definitely a lot more buoyant than they've been over the last couple of years. So those opportunities will always be there. However, it's worth asking, what are your reasons? Is there a different project that you could do inside the organization? Perhaps you've not asked that you want to work in a different department or take on more responsibility. So before you do that, always ask yourself the question: have I talked to my boss to try and fix what the issue is on that? And I think a lot of people just sort of make assumptions and presumptions, and then once they've made the decision and said, look, I'm leaving, it's very difficult for companies to say, you're not actually leaving, we'd like you to stay. But most companies don't do that because it's a decision that's already been taken.
So your relationship with your boss,
single most
and then the package.
The package is very important.
The package is important.
Absolutely.
For me too, like I find that most humans, most of the time, the research is very solid. They're willing to work for less money if they're working in a job that they enjoy. And at least 70% of the variance on whether or not they enjoy their job is their relationship with their direct line manager.
It is.
So it's a huge thing that you mentioned there, because the research is very solid on this. I've seen it hundreds of times.
And one more reason why I think, which is a really important factor in retaining people, is momentum. So employees are always looking at senior management, the organization, the strategy. Do they feel there is movement, there is change, things improving in terms of the results of the organization, the way it's conducting its business in the market, the customer feedback on their products and services? All of those things I think are very, very important. Generally, people will stay in an organization that's got a lot of momentum and energy. It's moving, it's changing, it's improving its the way it delivers its products and services. People want to be part of a success story.
That's true.
And it's very, very difficult for people to feel, I don't want to be part of that. Generally, true. So you've got to look at in the market. You've got to look at the competition as well. If you are a third or fourth tier company in your sector, then you're going to have major staff issues, because some of your better people will be looking at tier 2 and top tier organizations. So try and be the best that you can be in your sector. If you take care of your employees and build that culture, I think the customer relationships and the supplier relationships will all fit into place, because it's your people ultimately that are doing all of that.
100%. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Doc.
Great conversation.
It's been a pleasure being here, and I wish you success on your journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And business is personal. Always is and always will be.
Always will be, yeah.